Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be discussing the 13th major arcana, major tarot arcana, and its archetype, death. Yeah, death is one of the biggest fear of majority of people in the world. People fear death because they don't know what's going to happen after. It's not even the death itself that frightens people. It's the fact that it's unknown and it's only natural. In tarot, in the world of tarot, in the world of psychology and archetypes, this particular arcana doesn't necessarily mean actual physical death of the body. It means metaphorical death. It means transformation, transition from one state into another. It's an end of cycle. When one cycle ends, a new cycle begins. It's like a new beginning. Once you close one door, there is another door that's going to be open. Out with the old, in with the new, however you want to call it, but I'm sure you got the principle that I was trying to deliver right here. In the spreads, when you make a spread for a querent, for the person who's asking you something, any kind of question, and there is a card of death, be mindful. You have to explain the person in detail. Everybody's situation is individual. But the archetype death is not going to necessarily mean that somebody's dying, and most likely it's not the case. It means that some kind of event that has been happening in a person's life came to an end or has to be done. Some type of relationship that the person was maybe suffering from has to come to an end because it doesn't get you anywhere in life. Some kind of affair, some kind of, I don't know, business, some kind of project, something that you've been doing has to come to an end, or it has to transition into the new quality. It has to become different in some way. So that's what the death is all about. There's so many pieces of literature that describe in detail what actually happens, how our world looks beyond the invisible, like Tibetan Book of the Dead, Egyptian Book of the Dead, and a lot more. In those pieces of literature, the world is described kind of like a big cake with multiple layers, with multiple planes. The physical body, it's the vessel that we accumulated by a lot of, karmic allowances, but also genetic predisposition to each and one of the people varies. Somebody gets certain type of body, somebody gets different type of body, different combination of genes all together form that a vessel, that's suit that we are wearing throughout life. But as soon as it has an expiration date. Human body does have an expiration date. It's not an eternal. It cannot be preserved. Unfortunately, the death of the physical body, it's an inevitable cycle of life. We all have those relatives who passed away, all the relatives that brought a lot of pain onto the families. Yeah, we have older people, younger people who are no longer with us. Because, like I mentioned, the physical body does have an expiration date, and there are also some circumstances in life that happen which deprive person of life. But the spirit that lives in that container, as we call body, the journey doesn't end just like that. When the body decays, when the body is no longer alive, the spirit continues its journey. And that's a very comforting thought to have for those who have family members who are no longer with us. This is something to really hold on to and realize that what we think about life might not as it seems. There's so much more to it that we don't know. There's a legend, or I don't know if it's a parable or not, but in ancient Egypt, an ancient Egyptian civilization had a very specific understanding about the death. They venerated death as it was even more important than life itself. There was a lot of rituals, there was a lot of things that they were performing before they sent the person to the afterlife, as they used to call it, for a reason. Ancient Egyptians believed strongly that after the person is done here on earth, their mission is accomplished. Their physical body is no longer operating. Their spirit continues its journey to the afterlife. And there are figures that stands by the gate to the afterlife, and those figures, specific gods too, they measure, are you worthy of stepping into another realm? Are you worthy or not? So they put all the deeds you've done and they put on one scale, right? There are like two scales. And they put another object, which is a light object, its feather, on another part of the scale. And they were performing this measurement. And if your deeds were not worthy, in opinion of those gods, that you are not going to pass to the afterlife, or your journey is going to continue somewhere in another darker sides of the world. We're not going to get too deep into here, but it's just an allegory that allows people to understand that it's not the death that we should fear, it's the living meaninglessly. That's what we should really be afraid of. Life with no purpose, life with no meaning. Egyptians, and not only, a lot of other civilizations strongly believed the last thing you think about before you die, that will be the first thing you will see on the other side. That's why back in the days, it was crucial, it was so important for the warriors to die with honor. Warriors on the battlefield, they would rather accept death defending their country, defending their truth, defending something worth fighting for, protecting their women, children, their civilizations, their cities, countries, whatever the establishments they were protecting, whatever the idea they were protecting, but they considered death on the battlefield as an honor, because this was one of the ways to continue your journey with glory. And there were certain types of death that were considered very, very low quality death, because basically people who accumulated all the knowledge they gathered throughout life would have their experience even up to zero. And one of those type of deaths were when the person is deprived of the head, when somebody just, like uses the sword and just cuts down your head. That was considered one of the worst types of death, because the brain is one of our main crucial organs, which is responsible for nearly every function in our body, contain a lot of information. It's like a thumb drive. It's like, it's like motherboard in your computer. It's something that has very essential pieces of information that you will take with you to another life. Nevertheless, there were a lot of other circumstances where the memory can be restored, especially if the person belonged to a higher caste and practitioner of some esoteric knowledge, and there is some other ways to preserve what you accumulated as an experience. But we're not going to get into that. Another way to die was very famous practice was called karakiri or harakiri. It was performed by the Japanese warriors, soldiers, if I'm not mistaken. Maybe more other cultures were doing the same thing. But a karakiri was the way to deprive oneself of life, of the physical body, by inserting the sharp object like katana, sword, or another type of sword, another type of weapon, right into the middle of your stomach, where is the hara line. The hara line, it's that golden ratio line, which has a very vital importance on the human body, on the psyche as well. And that part in the body contained also a lot of vital information and experience the soul accumulated throughout lifetimes. In ancient Egypt, there was so many preparations made for the person whose body was no longer alive, especially if the person belonged to a higher caste, if it was a priest, a priestess, or pharaohs, or anybody, family of those people who had a higher position in society. Their death was like a super big deal. They were calling on special people, special cry ladies, cry women who were crying, sort of kind of making this scene and dramatic that the death itself is something as it is terrifying. It also brings the sorrow because it's a loss of the person you love, and so on and so forth. They were doing a lot of interesting things like mummifying and taking out the organs and trying to preserve them in the better condition, and putting a lot of essential things that they believed the deceased one will need upon entering another realm, and so on and so forth. Why do I refer so much to ancient Egypt? Just because our topic here on this YouTube channel, particularly on this playlist, is archetypes and major tarot arcanas. And as we all know, who are already watching this channel and who's practicing tarot, the real origin of tarot is ancient Egypt. That's where it all started. And usually I explain every single arcana piece by piece. I analyze every single thing we see on the card. I analyze the glyphs. This is the only archetype I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it because it's dangerous. I'm not going to do it because this is a very particular type of energy. It's like you can compare death archetype with zero in math. No matter how much you multiply by zero, it's going to be zero. It nullifies all the experiences before. It cleanses everything that has been, it's a good cleanser of negative energy for the people who know how to practice it. Death, it's not something to be afraid of. Death is something people with a strong cleansing skills, they can, healers, shamans, healers, they can cleanse you of negative energy. They can have a medium insertions, meaning like they can communicate with the deceased ones. A lot of people who feel that they have a strong protection from maybe their grandma or grandpa or somebody who was their relative who dearly loved them, maybe their parents. They kind of like a guardian angel for them. Even if they're not with us in the body, they're still with us in spirit. So there are certain practitioners who are able to communicate with parents of deceased people. And the archetype death will be definitely one of those archetypes. When you have that type of channeling ability, you will be able to communicate with people who are no longer with us. Death is it's like the energy of it. It's very like empty. It's like there's big nothing, like a big void. Some people, they go to the cemetery and they feel some type of way. Sometimes people are really afraid of cemeteries. They feel uncomfortable. They feel like, ooh, something is up. But some people, they feel completely normal. It's just like a park for them. This is one of the indications how you can find out how close you are to be able to channel that type of energy. If you're afraid of it, if you feel uncomfortable, definitely it's not your story, not your cup of tea. But if you're able to be completely okay spending time in a cemetery, visiting it upon request whenever you need to, whenever maybe you need to go pay some respects to your deceased ancestors on their anniversary or any other day, then you feel completely okay there. Then you are capable to tap into that. Why would anyone want to tap into that? Because there's so many powers in the universe. There's so many interesting things to discover. And instead of being afraid, it's good to ask yourself a question: what can I learn about it? But one thing is certain: no matter what are the glyphs meaning, which we're not going to go in detail, you cannot bribe death. Like the dead bodies which are walked over by the horse and the figure on the horse, and the priest is asking for forgiveness or whatever. When the time comes, it comes. You cannot bribe death. Like one of the good examples in cinematography will be that movie with Brad Pitt, which is called Meet Joe Black. It's a really good reference to the archetype death and this arcana. People who can channel it, they can transform. They can really change their life. They can overnight change everything, just making one decision to do so. Designer deck, I'm going to show you the variation. This is like a Santa Muerte, which is a more Mexican, I think, in Mexican culture. There's a lot of cultures that have different reference to death, like Hecata or Kali or different other goddesses, but this is Santa Muerte. To me, it looks like it. So the makeup is consequent. It's got the flowers, which flowers are meaning of life. It's a life energy, but flowers are also the way to venerate and show some respect and admiration and basically veneration of the people who are no longer with us. That's why people bring flowers when they go to cemeteries and stuff. In spreads, like I mentioned, it can signify the culmination, the ending of something, and always after ending, there's always a new beginning. People usually regret when they're about to die. They have several regrets, each his own. Everybody has their own regrets, but normally people would regret that they did not use the opportunities they had when they were still alive. They didn't do as much as they could. They didn't love enough. They could have loved more, spent more time with the people who were meaningful to them, but they didn't. Traveled more, visited more places, did more stuff, right? It's like a common regret people have. But one thing is certain. It's better to regret what you did than what you didn't do. Thank you so much for watching. If you're watching up until now, it means that you're interested in the world of tarot, in the world of archetypes, in the world of psychology. And I'm gladly inviting everybody to get enrolled in Archetypal Psychology course, where you can learn how to read each one of the single archetypes, not only major ones, minor ones as well. And you can turn this interesting hobby into income as well. All the information below the video. Please share with like-minded friends. And I'll see you on another episode. Thank you so much for watching. Bye.